Good evening. I hereby call this February the 12th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in and for being here this evening. I always like to start off and recognize all of our city staff, starting with our manager, who is not here at the moment, but Mr. Lee Garrity. Filling in for him is Mr. Greg Turner, our assistant city manager. We have Mr. Page, Mr. Rao. We have our assistant, we have our city attorney, Attorney Carmen, with us today. Have our fire chief, Chief Mayo, our police chief, Chief Thompson. And there are so many other very, very important people in the room. But I thank you all for what you do every day to help our citizens in this community. And we'll move forward with the agenda. Before we get to the general agenda, there are items on the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are unanimously approved with one sweeping motion, unless a member of this committee wishes to have an item pulled for discussion or consideration. Members of the committee, are there any items that should be pulled for consideration? Item C2 and C1. Nothing further. I entertain a motion to approve the balance. All right, we have approved item C3. All in favor, please vote yes. Opposers, vote no. And item C3 is approved unanimously. And we'll move to item C1, please.
Item C1, resolution authorizing permission to accept an ice cream book truck donated from the Winston-Salem Police Foundation.
Giving us some background information on this item is Chief Thompson. Mayor Pro Tem Burke, is there any item in particular you'd like to discuss, or would you like Chief Thompson to give a presentation? Oh, Mr. McIntosh, forgive me.
I wanted to do this just to shed a little spotlight on it, how great this is, and thought I'd give you an opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you. I
Chief
appreciate it. Good evening, Chairman Taylor.
Good evening.
Council member, committee members, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and Council member McIntosh. So, as we had discussed once before, the Winston-Salem Police Foundation was fortunate enough in 2015 to establish a police foundation, so Winston-Salem Police Foundation. And the foundation enables us to get items that helps us to further our mission of community-oriented policing in Winston-Salem. And these are things that we would not ordinarily be able to get just up front all the time with our general budget. And so we're fortunate enough this time that the Police Foundation has purchased a truck to be used for us, and we're calling this Operation Sweet Read, and it's for us specifically to do outreach in our community, reaching out to our children, developing a strong working relationship with them, while working towards the literacy issue in our community as well. And so what will happen is that we will deploy the Operation Sweet Reads truck all over our city in various communities, and in exchange for ice cream, we're going to read to our students and encourage them to read back to us, and then give them a book and ice cream. And so the whole idea is to engage our children in our community in non-enforcement times, and also to be able to provide a strong, trusting relationship with them, and also help with the literacy or improved literacy in our community.
Great. It's a wonderful program. This is the second vehicle that the foundation has given to the police department. And is there a command vehicle that came through the police foundation?
No.
Anyway, it's an incredible gift, and I want to thank the foundation for stepping up like that.
Thank you. We're extremely fortunate and very appreciative.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
And so we're hoping to have, we don't have exact dates on when we'll deploy. Right now we have a date set of June 8th, but again, that's fluent for the truck to be deployed, will be unveiled. And but right now it's in the process of being upfitted and dressed out. At the point that we can better determine the date of deployment, then we'll have a schedule to say where we'll be and when in our community. But the idea is to be all over the city as often as we possibly can, working with our children. Yes, ma'am. And in fact, we're working with Ms. Pam Peoples-Joyner to make contact with the different schools as well as our community centers in those neighborhoods. But we'll be more intentional about making sure that they're all aware at the time that we're deploying.
Thank you.
Growing up in this community, Chief, there was always an officer friendly. And I'm very excited to see that officer friendly. He hadn't gone or she hadn't gone anywhere, but we're back and we're out in the communities doing things like this. It's going to improve on police and citizen relationships, and it'll get police out in the communities working with young people, because sometimes there is a stigma that the police isn't for the people in the community, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So this is a great idea. I'd like to thank you for your leadership on this and the Police Staff Foundation. This is a great thing for the community. With that being said, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been motioned and properly seconded. All in favor, please vote yes. That is unanimous. Item C2, please.
Item C2, ordinance amending section 42-97 of the city code relating to weight limitations on through traffic on certain city streets. 15th Street, located in the Northeast Ward.
And this item is in Northeast Ward. I'd like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask Attorney Carmen to speak about this because we've had so many problems with the trucks not doing what they're supposed to do, and we're oversaturated east of 52 with garages and places where they dump a lot of their undesirables. And so the citizens have been very concerned. And I want Attorney Carmen to know I appreciate her hard work, and also Mr. Turner in working. And I had this pulled out so that the citizens in that area know that we are serious about their concern.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Turner and I will probably tag team this item. But just to piggyback on what you mentioned, based upon your concerns and the request made to my office and Mr. Turner, the city manager's office, we did send out letters to the various companies in the area in the Northeast Ward that have been basically have been in violation of the truck prohibition ordinances. And I did receive responses from a number of the companies advising that they have informed their drivers and their deliverers of goods and merchandise to their establishments of the rules and so forth. So we have made each of the companies aware of the ordinance, and we're trying to monitor them to make sure they're in compliance. Now let Mr. Turner talk about the specific ordinance.
Mr. Turner.
Mr. Chairman, in that meeting that we had with one of the companies, they pointed out that they actually have a depot at the end of 15th Street. The through truck prohibition ordinance allows the city to ban trucks that are going through a zone as long as that truck does not have a destination in the zone. And because this company actually had a destination in the zone, the total street or through street prohibition was ineffective. It was not going to do what the intention was, which was to keep traffic from going through the residential portion of, in this case, 15th Street between Patterson and Ivy. And so what we're recommending to the committee and to the full council is that you reduce the zone of the through truck prohibition so as to eliminate the destination that is currently in the existing zone.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yes, and also if Councilwoman Adams here, she would also have the same concern, because the Cal who works with her and works with me, they have been working very hard with the citizens up there, and we felt that we were being ignored. And I know that this will help to eliminate some of those problems. Even years ago, we sent them notes. We sent them and we talked and we met with them, but they went on deaf ears. And I said to the attorney, we have to get serious and let them know we are tired of this. And I thank you all for what you've done.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, again, this item is in your ward. Do you have a preference on this item in the form of a motion?
Yes, I move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
It's been motion. Is there a second? All right, all in favor, please vote yes. That passes unanimously. Now we'll move to the general agenda. There are two items on the general agenda. There's an item giving us information regarding the history of the Vehicle for Hire program. Councilmember Larson is not here today. He's under the weather. I know this is of particular interest to him and a number of the other committee members. So without objection, I'd like to hold this item over to our March meeting. It appears there is no controversy surrounding that, so we'll move item G1 to our March meeting. And item G2 is an item regarding information about a pay-by-phone application for on-street parking. And I think I just stole our city secretary's thunder, so item G2, please.
Item G2, information regarding pay-by-phone applications for on-street parking. This item was continued from the January Public Safety Committee.
All right, and queuing this item up, I believe, will be our Director of Transportation, Ms. Tonique McCullough.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As requested by this committee, our staff investigated the possibility of offering a pay-by-phone as an option for on-street parking. There were 2 providers that we found that rose to the top as far as offering pay-by-phone options, Passport Parking and Park Mobile. Both offered services which allowed customers to pay either by calling their toll-free number or using a smartphone application. There were additional fees, though, that these services would provide, additional fees and expenses that the city would incur if we were to go to these applications. Those fees include a convenience fee charged by the provider, which is typically around 35 cents per transaction, and a credit card transaction fee, which can be as high as 25 cents per transaction. And the reason that I share those fees with you would be because our current rate for parking, 25 cents an hour or 25 cents for the first hour for those parking spaces that have extended hours, is not sufficient to cover those fees should the city determine that we want to go to those applications. The other thing I would share with going to a pay-by-phone application would be that our existing pay stations are compatible. We have the Loop 2 pay stations, and they can be compatible with either the Passport Parking, Park Mobile, or other pay-by-phone applications. The single-space meters that we have on in our downtown, there are 550 of them. They are not compatible. So it would require the city to consider either upgrading those meters to compatible single-space meters or upgrading to provide additional pay stations. Our estimate to replace all of our single-space meters with pay stations would be about $1.28 million. Let's see. In your handout, there's information on the neighboring municipalities with their current rate for parking and the pay-by-phone companies that they currently have. The other information that I will share with you is this morning, Jason Theo, who is with our Downtown Winston-Salem partnership, he wanted to be here at the meeting tonight to talk about this item, but was unable to be here. Some of the comments that he shared was, and I will read his comments directly. The attached memo properly states that the existing prices per hour for on-street parking is lower in downtown Winston-Salem than in other peer cities. We understand and encourage the city of Winston-Salem to consider more modern pay stations. I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong. We understand and encourage the city of Winston-Salem to consider more modern payment systems such as those considered in the memo. We understand and agree that it will require raising on-street rates to fully implement a more modern system. We would encourage an incremental and gradual approach to raising on-street rates instead of doing this all at once. In summary, our department, we feel that having another pay option would be favorable. However, the concern that we have is that it would be at a loss to our current revenues because of the fact that our hourly rates are much cheaper than it would cost to actually implement the program. Any questions?
Well, I'll start by saying I think that, we are the city of arts and innovation, and it's important that we embrace that. So as the city of innovation, we need to do a better job of continuing to find ways to connect our citizens to the innovative ways that we can provide more services to them. So that makes sense. But we don't want to put any undue burdens on the citizens that we serve and represent or the city of Winston-Salem. So with that being said, members of the committee, are there any questions for Ms. McCullough? Mr. McIntosh.
Do you know what the current, do we currently run parking at a deficit or at a profit? Do we make money on,
Yes,
we do?
we do.
Any sort of rough idea of what that number is?
I do not have that, but I could provide
Is
that
it a
information.
significant amount of
for
money,
you.
or is it pretty much a break even?
I think it's, so on-street parking, it's a significant amount, but I can't tell you exactly what it is. I'm sorry.
So it kind of goes to my second question of how was the $1.50 an hour number arrived at? Is that an amortization of the $1,275,000 over a certain number of years? Obviously, some of that goes to cover the cost of the service providers, but looks like the service is 70 cents per transaction, and we're talking about another 80 cents over that.
There would be other upgrades to our system that would be required. One would be the pay stations that we would have to improve. The other, in order to provide the enforcement, we would have to do some improvements to our system so that our enforcers could have access to the information as far as confirming that people have paid for parking.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yes, I had a similar question as Mr. McIntosh. I wouldn't ask you to give it to me this evening, but to bring before Monday, I would like to have it. Of the past 5 years, can we show what we have actually made or lost as far as parking? And then the percentage of folks who are now, compared to 5 years ago, who are using the parking? If I could just get that.
We can get that information for you,
Yes, ma'am.
council member, but this item is just information. We need to go into council
Yeah.
on
But
Monday.
whenever you get it to me, bring it. I would like to get it
Yes, ma'am.
in my pack.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Turner or Ms. McCullough? Councilmember McIntosh.
More of a concern than a question, and it kind of goes to timing. We're dealing with the scarcity of downtown parking because downtown has become more successful, so we're kind of dealing with the problem of that success has generated. But as we just, in our last meeting where we looked at our upcoming budget, I don't think we're in a position to subsidize parking, whereas right now we're making money on parking with the current schedule. I'm the one who's been pushing for more technology to ease our parking problems. It doesn't seem like a good time for us to push through a jump that's that big. I think that much of an increase will cause a pretty significant ripple. I think it will get significant backlash against it. And looking at our budget, I don't think we're in a position to subsidize it. So I guess my feeling is to go slow on this, and there may be other technology coming down the pike to look at that might not be quite so expensive, but it looks to me like this is going to be a tough one to implement successfully in the short term.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess as far as the citizens, what kind of input are they having with this?
We didn't collect any input from the citizens, particularly on the pay-by-phone application. We particularly just looked at what options were available and the convenience of it. As far as any individuals that we've spoken with, the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership or other people that we know that it will be more convenient. There's when you have to find a quarter to pay for parking, sometimes it's not convenient to have it, and so if you're at the pay station, sometimes you end up paying more. But we haven't had any public information.
I guess you can tell us where people are parking the most, where they prefer to park.
Based upon revenues that we've collected, we could determine that.
I'd like
for
to
you.
know that too. And I agree with Mr. McIntosh. Downtown is moving, and we don't really want to do anything to keep them from going. It looks like everybody's enjoying it. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get a parking space. That's good. When I see that, that means people are using downtown and enjoying it. Thank you.
So it sounds like the temperature of the committee is possibly to hold this item
Yeah.
for the consideration. And I took some notes, and I think that the committee has asked for information on-street parking revenues, also information on just sort of the uses of parking. I think that was Mayor Pro Temp's request. And then we can just sort of evaluate other technologies for parking. Councilman Larson. I mean, McIntosh. Forgive me, Councilman McIntosh.
As part of the discussion, I do think we undercharge for parking. I would like to look at what council feels about a smaller increase versus a big step into that. We are very cheap right now considered our other metropolitan counterparts, and so I would like to see if we could raise that a little bit and push some of the business to the parking decks and off the streets so those spaces become more available. As we go through this, though, I think we do need to always be very mindful of the people who work downtown, the waiters and the busboys and the bartenders who we don't want to put the burden on
Right.
them. So if we can find a way to sort of, keep this an efficient system, that would be good.
Pro Tem Burke.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's why I asked earlier, have we had any input from citizens?
We have not, but
And I think that we, just as you brought up, people who work downtown, if you raise, and they don't really make the most money, they're making minimum wages, and then if you're going to put parking added to their, coming out of their income, that will be a negative. And I think that in some kind of way, you mentioned Mr., the one who downtown over down.
Jason Thiel.
Fields, Mr. Fields, well, and he has some input, I guess. Maybe you can see, has he heard from anyone?
Well, one thing I did not recall to mention, we have done a parking study downtown, and we may have some information on parking rates in that study. I will go back and pull that information and provide that to you.
And one other thing I noticed, after a certain time, do you have to pay for parking?
After hours,
Mhm.
after 5 o'clock, you don't.
I saw a man, it was around about 6 o'clock, and he was putting money, and I wanted to stop to tell this man, you don't have to do that. So let's make sure. How do you let the public know you don't have to pay for parking after a certain time?
On our signs, I think it indicates that you don't, but I will confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Turner.
Mr. Chairman, just one of the things to keep in mind about on-street parking is if you look at the hierarchy of desirability for parking, it's on-street parking first, then parking lots, then parking decks. And that's just the way human nature is, actually. So when we talk about on-street parking, we're usually talking about parking focused on customers who are coming downtown as opposed to employees who are working downtown. So the issue about those who may be impacted, I think we generally have focused in the past on the customers as opposed to the employees working in the various venues that are downtown. But that's a philosophical discussion council could have and decide to change that.
Mrs. Burke.
Now, some companies may have that, like your BB&T Bank, and you have some of your other companies where they do have parking. But I'm talking about people who may work for some of these places, and they do not have parking for them. Some of these restaurants, they don't. You just need to give us a report to see who is providing, and that will help me to better understand if I think we ought to be doing something as far as that will either add or take from folks coming downtown, and especially employees working in these restaurants and in these smaller places. And if they have to pay for parking, I just need to know how and what they're doing.
So this sounds like an issue we do need to move forward with addressing. It just sounds like the committee isn't ready to move forward with addressing that today. So if we can bring back the information that has been requested, we'll continue to evaluate the revenues and the other options, and we'll just continue to do what's right for the citizens. Meanwhile, those who might be watching this, or those who might read in the paper and the other media outlets, please give us feedback. It's important that we know. I mean, we want to fix problems, but I don't think we want to fix problems that we don't have. So if people are concerned about it, then we'll address it, and if not, then we'll do what else needs to be done. Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I'm not going to call the name of a big company, but when they gave their employees $1,200 bonus, they had not been paying for parking. But then that next week they told them you'll be paying for parking money. So I think we need to really, we're doing so well with people coming to town and enjoying our downtown, and we spend a lot of tax dollars, Mr. Chairman. And I just think that is something that we need to look at very carefully.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, I think you have the last word. Is there anything else that should be discussed on item G2 regarding parking? All right, we'll close that particular item, and we'll, I guess, bring something back for March, just to continue the conversation, moving into the budget cycle. Members of the committee, Members of the public, is there anything else that we should discuss or consider for the good of the order? Seeing nothing further, we'll consider this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.